It's a stunning backdrop.
Set in the Galatea Valley below the Udawera Ranges, Nzherald Oliver has been farming here for the last 16 years.
It's beautiful. We've got pure water just pouring out of those hills, and we want it to continue going down to the sea in its best state, you know, as pure as it can be. And we have to try and farm so we're not putting phosphate and sediment and N into our waterways.
And that's why he switched to using biological fertilisers. They contain no nitrogen or N, which can be damaging for the environment if they end up in our waterways. And he says they're just as effective.
Over time I've seen how well it works. I was sceptical to start with because you know, traditional soluble fert and N man. Over the time of using this fert, we have now got a bigger depth of topsoil. It's not hard, it's aerated. We don't deep pug, but we certainly there's certainly a lot more topsoil and organic matter available, and animal health. We don't have metabolic issues like we used to. The cows are healthy, the cows are content. It starts at the grass and goes right through to the whole process that we have.
So this is what we add to lime, dolomite, soft phosphate rock. It's all part of that mix. So it's just loaded with beneficial fungi and bacteria that speed the digestion process of organic matter in the soil.
Peter Burton's the farmer turned fertiliser guru.
When we were farming, I couldn't get answers to a lot of the questions that I had, like why do I have to put on superphosphate? What's the answer? You know, tell me why. And people just went, it's good for you, just do it. You know, don't ask, just do it. And so I kind of started to think, I think there must be a linkage between what we're doing with soil fertility and our animal health.
And that's when he came across the benefits of using mineral resources. His functional fertiliser treats the soil's biology as opposed to traditional forms of fertiliser which treat the plant directly.
So we started applying lime, which we were advised not to do. I got into doing some soil aeration work. We also applied some foliar fertiliser, and we were starting to see some interesting things start to happen little by little over a long period of time, piecing it together in such a way that we had something that delivered on all fronts.
Burton began investing in dolomite from Golden Bay and Sechura rock from Peru as earth-based soil improvers, helping increase soil fertility, grass growth and reduce erosion.
We're trying to sequester carbon into our soil basically, and by doing it in a biological method we're not actually killing the soil biology, and so we're actually allowing our soil biology to grow, and by putting on fungi and carbohydrates we're actually feeding it, so the whole engine room is working, and so we're getting, you know, our grass to grow through a natural process as much as we can.
But Dr. Doug Edmeades isn't convinced. He has 40 years of soil and fertiliser expertise and says there's no evidence that different forms of nutrients have any less impact on the environment.
Whether it's a soluble fertiliser, industrial fertiliser, chemical fertiliser, organic fertiliser, the form of fertiliser is irrelevant in terms of those mechanisms. So when people say, use my product, it will reduce the environmental footprint, be very, very sceptical of that suggestion. There's no evidence to support those statements. We've got a lot of fertiliser people in the, if I call it the fringe of the fertiliser industry, running around with their little products, saying that they're going to solve the environmental problems. They will not. The environmental problem is a result of having healthy soils, irrespective of whether nutrients have come from organic sources or chemical sources.
Dr. Edmeades says fertilisers have been used for centuries and are a vital tool for farmers.
Now without those inputs we wouldn't have the production we've got. For example, if you stopped fertilising our soils now, production would decline and within 10 years we'd be in deep strife. So fertilisers are absolutely essential to the, dare I say it, the sustainability of our whole agricultural system. without fertilisers, production would decline at about 5% per year until there was virtually, well, very little production at all.
And he says, compared with elsewhere in the world, New Zealand soils measure up well.
There's no evidence that our soils are being degraded by what people say is the chemical nightmare. That simply isn't happening. The Waikato Regional Council have a monitoring program whereby each year they go in and sample soils and measure soil quality, etc. And there's no evidence from that survey that under our intensive agricultural systems that our soils are being degraded, except for situations where farmers have been overcropping.
Burton says using conventional forms of fertiliser isn't wrong, but failing to embrace modern advances in farming and more sustainable practices is.
There's better things to use than a lot of the mainstream products now, particularly urea, but it's the excessive amounts, it's the reliance on it that's really the major issue.
On a beef and stud farm near Whakatane, Neil Burke is another convert to Burton's biological fertiliser.
In the past, when we first came here, a dung would just go like concrete, right? It would just dry out and not be breaking down like this. And so we now have this microlife.
As a result of that, the gut is working better, so what's actually being deposited out the back end is more readily accepted by the soil.
In other words, the roots of plants and grasses go deeper, sucking up the pollutants instead of sending them back into the environment.
This is nearly all young, fresh root all the way through here. There's no old root matter, that's all been digested, so that's a lot of the carbon going back into the system.
Conventional fertiliser and functional fertilisers have many similarities, but some key differences too. While both use carbon to feed the grass and soil, conventional fertilisers also use nitrogen. Functional fertiliser instead uses a mix of fungi, bacteria, biocarbons and carbohydrates to eliminate the need for nitrogen.
It's been in there for 11 hours.
The aim is to grow better food.
It's nice and crunchy.
But this oven isn't cooking human food. It's drying out samples of grass fertilised biologically and conventionally.
This is our dried sample of grass.
It's part of an ongoing monitoring program to assure customers their fertiliser works.
Drying the grass, we can now work out the actual dry matter growing, not just estimate it. So, for example, this sample here, its wet weight was 161.8 grams and dry weight was 31.5.
While wet grass is mostly made up of water, once it's dried you can measure that amount of nutrients in the grass. The more dry matter, the more nutrients. And this grass seems to have more nutrients than the grass grown with conventional fertilisers.
It's just making sure that what we're providing the farmers in terms of the soil improvers and the fertility programs actually gives them a good basis to their soil from which they get good plant health, animal health and as a result human health.
We can be a lot more efficient with what we're doing and have a lot less leakage into the water system. We've got increasing nitrogen levels in our water tank, in our underground water. It's another signal, something's not right, it's not sustainable. And we don't have to make huge shifts in what we're doing, we just have to prioritise. And so soil fertility systems, as far as we're concerned, come first, then appropriate stocking rates. And then a lot of things simply disappear as issues.
Many of these products are sold into a market on the basis that what we are doing currently, traditional agriculture, including chemical fertilisers, is bad. And I challenge that. Yes, there are problems that we're confronting at the moment in terms of water quality, and I'm confident that we will solve these problems. Now, people on the fringe will say, well, what we're doing traditionally is wrong, it's bad, Get rid of that and start with something else. I'm saying that we can have our cake and eat it too, providing we apply objective scientific analysis to the problem. It's not a matter of one being better than the other, they're both equally effective. Therefore, for a farmer who's worried about financial efficiency, he chooses the least cost product to do the agronomic job that's required.
One of the biggest things that will make change in our industry is understanding how soil biology works, because relentlessly pouring on fert isn't the answer.
For Daryl, biological fertiliser has been a change for good.
It takes time. You have to be committed to the process, and it doesn't happen overnight.
One benefiting not only his farm and animals, but the wider environment.
It's a great philosophy, it works.
Hunter Calder, Local Focus.